just a chance internship, I realized that there is employee relations, and I've been doing that for like the last 10 years, and I love it.
Nice. Thank you so much. And then,
Hi everyone. I'm Sisonke. I studied at UWC, did my LLB, and then I completed my LLM, the University of Missouri in the US, and then I came back for LLD and everything. But I worked in Limited.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much, ladies. Before we get into your respective fields that you got into, and before you just explain to us how you found out about the field, I just want to ask, why do you think a lot of law graduates tend to go either the attorney or advocate route? Do you think it's because they don't have the information available to them with regards to the alternative routes, or do you think everyone actually wants to go into practice?
I think for me, it's how in lectures you told that, okay, you graduate, you're supposed to fund your articles, and that's the way to go. And it's very rare that you are told, or in career expos, I know in career expos, there was like no company secretary there. So the only people that I could speak to were people that were practicing in court, and if they're not practicing in court, they were like wanting to practice in court, or they were going to venture that way, but there wasn't really other people advertising other careers other than being an attorney, being an advocate, being in-house legal, nothing more than that.
That is so true, actually. It makes me think of, sorry, Naledi.
I was going to say the same thing, that I feel like no one tells you that there are other careers outside of being an attorney, a prosecutor, or an advocate. From the day that you start at school, the first thing, or start at varsity, the first thing that they tell you is try to get articles. So outside of the box, all you're thinking about is, I need to get my articles in, I need to become a practicing attorney. And only once you are outside, you realize that there's so much more, there's such a large spectrum of things that you can do outside of practicing, but they don't even tell you that while you're studying, that, attorney is not the be all and end all of your law degree. There's so many things that you can do with it.
There are so many. While doing my research, I came across a few. You have governance, you have compliance, you have fashion law, you have research. There are so many. And going back to what Sisonke was saying, I remember during our career fairs as well, we had, law firms coming to us. Everyone is, as soon as you graduate, find articles. And by the time you're in your final year, everyone is rushing to get articles. And I think, as we all know, Mapule also mentioned this, not everyone finds articles. I know about a lot of law graduates who are still sitting at home, 2 years later after graduate, without articles. And I don't know, I wonder if they have this information available to them that, hey, you can, take a different route, go a different way. But just with Safura, I just want to ask, how did you always know about public health? Did you always know that this was something you were going to get into, or did you come to find out about this later on in your career?
So I think my story is unusual, but also common. So both my parents are in public health. So I grew up wanting to be like my parents, which I think a lot of us can relate to in many ways. They influenced me a lot. And so I knew about the space, and originally I wanted to be a doctor, and then I wanted to be a journalist, and how you go through your teenage years. And so even when I did law, it was always with this idea of I wanted to do something to do with health. I didn't know about the field that I entered until I was in my master's. So, I think health law in general is not very well known. And then my subset of law is like really unusual. I mean, I was one of the first lawyers to join the School of Public Health at Wits. So it's not like, I don't think that field is very well known. I actually only found out about it because I had a chance meeting with somebody who was in the field, and I was talking to her and I was saying, oh, I'm so interested in this and this. And she's like, there's lawyers who do this, right? And there's only like about 10 or 15 in the whole world who do it, but there are lawyers who do it. So yeah, it's sort of a mixture of both.
Okay. what is it exactly that you do? Like, what does it entail, your job, your day to day?
So I think a lot of people, when they hear about legal research, they think about maybe like a law clerk who's looking at cases, or they think about an RA to a professor who's sort of given a question and you have to like find the answer. I look at something a little bit different, which is we design projects that are about improving people's health. And what I do is I look at how laws and policies influence people's health and how we can use them to kind of make people's lives better. So a really like easy example is some people are aware of a tax that was passed on like Coke and other fizzy drinks. And that's actually a public health measure. It's designed to make people consume less sugar and therefore improve their health. So I look at things like that. And so it's quite different to what normal legal research is, but I love it.
Yeah, nice. And I know you've also been working with the current, COVID laws and current pandemic that's happening right now. How is that going, and how's your research in that regard?
So it's quite funny because I think very few, especially lawyers, very few lawyers were interested in what I did. I think a lot of people don't have an interest in health, and specifically they weren't interested in what I do. And COVID has completely changed that. Now everybody wants my opinion on everything, which is so unusual. Like, I mean, I just got an invitation to write for the Constitutional Court Review in December. I get invited to speak about all sorts of things that I wouldn't have thought people cared about, like whether it's, criminalization of transmission of COVID, or whether it's about vaccine access. And I think it's a good thing for the field because I'm also getting contacted by law students. I think it's because it's something we're all experiencing commonly. Like, we're all going through this COVID period together. And while a lot of lawyers are looking at, oh, what are the employment implications? What are the consumer protection implications? There's not a lot of lawyers kind of at the forefront in South Africa looking at, well, how do laws help and improve our public health response to the virus? And so that's what I do, which is, I think it's tiniest. And I'm, if anybody wants to speak in more detail, like, please drop me a line, because there's too few of us in the world, let alone in the country.
So that's very, do you think perhaps that it's not necessarily that they weren't interested, they just didn't maybe know about it? Because I recently found out about your work, and I was like, hey, I didn't even know this existed. This is something interesting. So I think perhaps maybe people just don't know or are ignorant about the field.
I think because it's so interdisciplinary, it's difficult for people to understand what I do if they don't understand public health. Whereas now, because everybody understands what COVID is doing, it's very easy for people to understand the public health aspect of what I do. And so I think, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think it's that people weren't interested, but I think it's very hard for people to be interested if they don't understand it. And I think that's probably the challenge for all of us, is that because people don't talk about a career in compliance or a career in public health law to law students, it's very difficult for them to understand what it is that we do. Whereas most law students will understand what an article clerk does, or what an advocate does, or what a law professor does, because we see it, during our training.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I just want to ask, guys, if you could please just mute your microphones if you're not talking, because we can hear everything that's happening in the background and it's causing a bit of a disruption. Okay, thank you. And Mapule, can you also just tell us a little bit about how I know you mentioned that you couldn't get into articles, and that's how you ended up going into the route that you went into. Can you please just tell us a little bit about your story as well? And explain it.
So actually throughout law school, I thought I wanted to join the NPA, and then they put a stop to the what do they call it? Aspirant prosecutor program. And then I found out about forensics by chance, actually in third year. It was the annual career fair. So a friend of mine who was studying accounting was standing by the KPMG table. And I remember the guy asked me, oh, don't you want to know anything? And I was like, I'm a law student. KPMG doesn't have anything for me. And they were like, no, actually, that's when they gave me a pamphlet on the forensics graduate program. And that's how I learned about forensics. So that sparked my interest then. And then I started looking into the forensics field a lot. I applied to the audit firms for their graduate programs, and I got into the Deloitte one. I was there for about 2 years, yes, 2 years. And then while I was there, I was learning more about forensics and everything surrounding forensics and risk advisory, and started doing more research on the area of forensics, compliance, risk, and governance. And when my graduate program ended, that's when I joined Alexander Forbes in the compliance department. But I
Okay.
think law doesn't really teach people about these areas. It's all like it's the big five law firms or nothing. That was like throughout law school, it was big five or nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. So you went from forensic and now you're doing compliance, or are
Yes.
you
It's essentially the same.
the
It's
same?
just
What?
that with forensic, you investigate more. So where I was, forensics there was mainly financial crime compliance, where you ensure that the client adheres to the FICA regulations. But we also had projects where we would investigate potential fraud within the company. Yeah, and then when you didn't have work, like you could go to different departments within risk advisory. I remember one time I worked on a business continuity management project with the cyber security team. So it was quite broad, and I'm quite glad that I started my career in a consulting firm where you could learn about different stuff. I remember I once tried out working with the data analytics team, but I quit after a week because all the coding stuff was not for me. But it was quite fun. And essentially, forensics is like a small part of compliance. That's what I would say. It just
Okay.
involves more investigations.
Yeah. Okay. And in order to get into what you're currently doing, so you got your LLB, hey? You got your
Yes,
LLB.
so I did my
Yeah.
LLB, and then I did a postgraduate diploma in commercial and business law. And then my modules there were banking and financial markets, cybersecurity, international law on international law on foreign investments, and access to information and privacy law.
Yeah.
Yes. And then this year I'm doing a postgraduate diploma in financial planning. That's essentially to understand more of how the investments business work, just to make my work easier. I also completed the RE1 and RE5. So
Okay.
yes,
Yeah. Okay. No, nice.
I'm currently working towards being a phase approved compliance officer.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Susanke, can you also just tell us a bit about your story and how you came about to land into the field you're currently in?
Yeah, so I was studying at UWC, and then you know, at UWC, I don't know if it's like this with many other universities, where by third year, if you did not secure articles, it's going to be very problematic for you, or it's going to be like by your final year, you're very stressed, like you're here with stress. So I was one of those. I did my work. I worked for Legal Aid, UWC Law Clinic. So throughout my undergrad, so I'd go to the Calicha office and worked on holidays without pay and everything. I learned the court system because I was based in the magistrate court. So I did the whole rounds and everything, but still I didn't have articles by my final year. And then during the exam time, I applied for this position. It was the junior company secretary. And I applied for the position. I was like, I don't know what they do, but they send it to our emails. Should have something to do with law. Even if it doesn't, I'll have something to do next year. And then when I showed up on the interview, maybe I didn't do a lot of research because I was very under pressure with exams and everything. I went after my exam, and then they were like, okay, so what you gonna be doing? And I was like, I just described the normal secretary work. And then who's now the director, my manager at the time, she's a director now in that company. So I was like, okay, well, this is what the company secretary does. We don't do that. That's the ordinary secretary job. We don't do that. And then that's when I learned about the job on the interview. So she walked me through it and everything. And then I got hired. And then I worked there for like 7 months. It was not a very different, it was not a difficult transition, you know, from like, I wasn't depressed or anything. They were there guiding me. doing the work, showing me the roles, because they knew that I didn't know more about the job. So 2 of us were employed there. And then in July, I had to go to my master's, got a scholarship to do my master's in the United States. So I got that scholarship. I resigned, which was very painful to do. And then I left because I wanted to study further.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, I worked in research, doing I think most likely like coding cases for arbitration cases, because I did my master's in alternative dispute resolution.
Can I
So,
interrupt you there?
sorry?
Sorry, just to go back, you mentioned you were doing your company secretary. Just tell us what it is when you eventually found out.
What I was doing.
Yeah, what is it that you were doing? What are the company secretary?
Okay. So basically, you look into the director's duties, first of all. You need to know what the directors are supposed to be doing and when they're supposed to be doing it, and you need to be clued up about the meetings and everything. You look into the legislation that relates to the company. So if, let's say, you work for a financial services company, you're supposed to be clued up on all the acts in that regard. Like, what is it that they need? Compliance, are they complying? The financial statements, you issue the share certificates, you liaison with the shareholders as well, and the parent companies, if there is any. So you sort of like a link with the shareholders and the directors and the actual running of the company, day-to-day running of the company. It's most likely like admonish, can get a bit admonish at first, but I think mostly sort of the HR of directors, basically. Because the hiring of new directors, the resigning of directors is supposed to be clued up about it. The directors' qualifications, if they meet the requirements set out by the Act, what is it they're supposed to be doing, and what qualifications do they need to have, and then you're supposed to be clued up with that as well. But basically just looking into the running of the company, the legislation, compliance and stuff.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So you got
Yeah.
it.
So yes. So I studied LLM, and then I came back last year, and then I started, I didn't find, well, I wanted to start with my PhD for the first 6 months, but that was also very stressful because because I've already tasted how it feels to be the company secretary. I was somewhat picky that I knew what I didn't want. I knew that I wanted to be the company secretary's sphere. I didn't apply more for articles, and everything that I applied for articles, it didn't really go well. I think because my energy wasn't there. I wasn't like, okay, I'm applying for a job to get it. I was like, okay, I need to do something. I guess I should apply for this job. And then, but I knew that I didn't want to go that route. So what I did was I just focused on my PhD. My PhD is on customer dispute resolution. And then beginning of this year, I got contacted by a recruiter who asked me basically if there's like an oil and energy company that is interested in me for the company secretary coordinator position. I was like, sign me up, it's what I want. So, so when I got there, we just had a meeting and I started working in March. I started working for that company in March. Same, but now as a company secretary coordinator, it's more of the admin stuff for the directors and the compliance statutory have to deal with the auditors mostly, because the auditors will do like the compliance check or give outside recommendations, and you have to make sure that you follow out with those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That it seems like it was quite a journey from. Okay, so you haven't felt any. You 100% sure that you don't ever want to go into practice because you.
I'd say 80. I'd say, yeah, there's a big
way to do the transition back into practice and do your articles again.
And the thing is, I want to be admitted, but for my field, it's not a necessity to be admitted as an attorney, but it's an advantage. I do want to be admitted as an attorney, and I think maybe in the future I might just dip in a bit, just a little bit, that side. And the other thing that I want to highlight that is different between a company secretary, because right now I picked up with the company that I work for. We have like in-house legal, and then we have the COSEC team. So the in-house legal would look at the contracts, drafting, and everything that relates to the company. But then with us, we'd look at the actual running of the company. So that's a bit different, but we're still in the same department, but I'm just in a different side.
Right. Okay, no, thank you so much for that, Sisonke.
Okay.
Naledi, could you also just please share your story with us and how you came to be in the field you are currently in?
Okay, so I got my LLB degree from the University of the Free State. I think in my last year of my degree, I then did my articles. And I think you'd understand as a young Black student without a license, without a car, trying to get articles, the frustration of that. When I finally did get articles and I had my Mazda.
Naledi, please speak up a little bit. Your audio is a bit low.
Is it?
Yeah.
And now? Is it still low?
Yeah, it's a bit low. Can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then I did my articles. I completed my articles, and I think my articles was very frustrating for me because I did it mostly at Afrikaans firms. It wasn't a great experience. And I think also the fact that I would then be in and out of courts doing things like bail applications, just the magistrate's court and things like that were things that I really, really didn't enjoy. And then sorry, my son is crawling, which is unnecessary. You can get up. So then after my articles, I also wanted to do the aspirant prosecutor program. There were too many of us. Every year I would apply, I was not getting in. And then one day I applied for an internship at Correctional Services. All of this while trying to then write my exams as well. And I think I failed estates by 2 marks. I got an oral, went back, and I failed it again. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't care if this is the last module I'm left with. I really don't want to do this. And then I got into employee relations. So the funny thing is, when Correctional Services took me in, I was supposed to go to the legal department because the plan was I wanted to be in the legal team, to be a legal advisor. That was the next best thing for me. And that was based on opening careers every Sunday, trying to look for a job. And they didn't have space for me in the legal department. So the manager of employee relations at that point had just gotten his LLB degree. And I think when they were thinking where to plot me, they thought, okay, he has an LLB degree, whatever it is that he has, he'll help her. And that's how I got into employee relations. And I found that, wow, I really, really am enjoying this. I think I enjoyed it so much. After 3 months, they seconded my manager somewhere else. And as an intern at Correctional Services, I was running that department. After that, I started looking for more employee relations-based jobs. I ended up getting a job as a consultant at LaborNet. And with that, they had a lot of multinational companies as their clients. And I was still in Bloemfontein then. And then one of them just said, listen, we want to start an employee relations department. Come join us, start this department. I literally had no experience, but then I went into one of the airlines. I started an employee relations department. And since then, it's just really been going from strength to strength. It's an amazing field. It's one that I enjoy a lot. Yeah, so that's how I got into it. In terms of what we do, so what do? I manage the relationship between the management and labor, right? So I manage workplace discipline. I manage the relationship with the unions. I manage company policies. If there's hearings and employees need to be dismissed, we manage that. We manage the retrenchments. Safura right now is speaking about sugar tax. So at one point I was at a soft drink manufacturer and I was with the unions and we were lobbying against sugar tax. So that was the other end of the spectrum, like, no, this sugar tax is gonna go towards our bottom line. And at the end of the day, we need to save jobs. So we were striking against that sugar tax with the unions. And then you also managed, you talked about now the impact of COVID. So in what we do, because despite the fact that just contravening disciplinary hearings. It's not only about absence and stealing, but now we have the fact that what do we do in an employment space where an employee comes and is not wearing a mask? So those are the things that we're asking ourselves now in terms of workplace discipline, that now we need to implement things like you need to sanitize your hands, you need to wear a mask, and how do we control that in a workspace? So that's literally what we do. It's sort of like a practice in the sense that we still go to the CCMA. So at the CCMA, I am then now the attorney for the company, and most of the time we do go against attorneys. So having your articles is an advantage in that regard, because if you are in an arbitration is just like a mini court. So I think my articles assisted me, or has assisted me in that regard, but that is in essence what I do.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I missed maybe a couple of the beginning of your intro. Did you say you did get admitted as an attorney?
No, I didn't pass the states and then I gave up.
Oh, okay, because okay.
Never mind. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you so much, ladies. I do have a few more questions, but before I carry on, I just want to ask the audience, our readers and followers, if you guys have any questions for our panelists, perhaps, before we carry on. I think there's someone who's trying to connect and ask a question. Fatima? Okay, maybe not.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Musima.
I'm okay. So I also did my LLB and 2 months ago got admitted as an advocate. But I'm not with any bar and I haven't written the bar exam or anything. I just got admitted as a sidebar. And then I recently started teaching in a national diploma program for legal practice. And one of the courses I'm teaching is mercantile law. So that's where I started seeing things with companies and things like that, like Sonke was saying, right? So I just needed to ask her, what is the best way now to sort of reach into that area of becoming a company secretary? Because I'm now considering writing board level exams with the CSSA, but I'm not entirely sure because it's such an expensive journey, whether I should venture into that or if there are easier avenues towards becoming a company secretary. That's my question.
Susanka? You're on mute. Okay.
Oh yeah, I just unmuted it. I think for me, it's not necessary to be a company secretary that you must be like admitted and everything. So someone with an accounting degree can also become the company secretary. And if you have an LLB degree, that's like a good standing. I think to venture there, you just have to do it. You just have to go in. Like there's no other way. That's why I like this profession. There's no other way that you need to pass this and then get into that. You just have to get in, apply for the positions, and that you see. First apply for because there's like a group secretary, and then there's like the company secretary, and then there's all assistant company secretary and junior, whatever. So just apply. I don't say apply for the smaller positions, but they will teach you more. Like in case, just be minimum commitment. Like you'd have to be committed to your work, but do not be looking overall to the group and managing the affairs of the group. It will be like maybe on the assistant position. So check that out. And then also what you can do is, so there's like the Institute of Directors, I just forgot their name. It's just, but like the Institute for Directors, they do have short courses there for company secretaries. So you can check that out. I will find the name, hopefully while we are still on the call, but it is the Institute for Directors. And you can do the course and become the chartered company secretary there. Yeah, so you just have to go in. If you have LLB degree, just go in. There's no other thing that you need to pass. But if you want to improve yourself or learn more, you can do like the short courses for the company secretaries, like on that Institute of Directors there.
All
I
right,
hope I
thank
answered
you. Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much for that and answer, Sisonke. That's actually the question I was going to ask the panel. And just to, so Sisonke, what you're saying is in order to get into company, to become a company secretary, all you need to have is your, I think the basis, your LLB, and then you just start applying for
Yeah.
the, so you don't need any extra certificate courses that you need to do, or if you don't need that, are there any courses that you could do that could perhaps help you to improve
Yeah.
your chances of getting, yeah, what do you perhaps know of any?
Yeah, there are courses like the one that like to become like the chartered company secretary. I just forgot the name of the institution. I think, I don't know, UCT sometime last year advertised like a short course as well at UCT. Sometimes they hold them here and there. Yeah, basically you don't need them to get in. You can be the assistant company secretary and figure your way in. And then, but it's not recommended, but it's good to be, secured and be confident in what you do and research more and get as much knowledge as you as you would feel comfortable to step into that field. But it's not like a set stone requirement that this is the requirements that you need to have. Like, for example, like being an attorney, that you need to have done the articles, passed the board exam and everything. You don't need that. But when you're inside, you can also continue improving yourself.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Just going back to Safura, with regards to getting into public health law, apart from obtaining your LLB, do you think there are any other perhaps requirements that law graduates need to fill up in order to get into public law? And can you please tell us a bit about them?
So I think, there may be people interested in public health law, but I think what I'm saying applies to anybody who's interested in being in an interdisciplinary space, whether it's that you're interested in being in housing, education, or whatever it is. And that's just that you need a very good understanding of the other discipline you want to work in. So your law degree will train you in an LLB. It will not train you so if you want to be in education, it won't train you in education. It won't train you in housing. And so a lot of people pick those things up through, being in spaces where they can learn about those things. So for example, some people might go to Equal Education and learn about education. Some people may go to like LRC and learn about housing. There isn't sort of a comparable space for health. I suppose there's Section 27, but obviously because I had an interest in the field, I did it myself. And then I did do a specialist LLM in my field. What I will say is I have had, my team is now 6 people, and at one point there were 3 lawyers in it, and I was the only lawyer who had specialized training in my field. The other lawyer who was with us had a master's in human rights, and the other lawyer had done her undergraduate in teaching and then did a law degree. So really the space I'm in is about applying other kinds of skills into the domain of health. So, I don't have a master's in taxation, but I still look at a sugar tax. And I think that's just general advice. Obviously I did my articles, I clerked at the Constitutional Court, and I did a master's, but none of those things were specifically, except for my master's, focused on the area I'm in now. It's just that they taught me different skills that I then was able to use in my field today. So I would, and the last thing I would say is when we were hiring for our next lawyer to join, which was earlier this year, the 2 candidates I had, one of them had a background in economics and then did her law degree, and the other candidate, as I mentioned, has a master's in human rights law. So, it's not like we were looking for a specific candidate. we were looking for somebody who had an understanding of how law applied in real life. And that could have been like what Sisonke does, it could be what Mapule does, like it could be what, you know, it could be anybody. It could even be a certain somebody who worked for the labor unions who were opposed to the sugar tax, who I won't name here. But, you know, that's the thing about working in an interdisciplinary space is because there's so few of us, it's not like it's very competitive. It's not like you need to be hyper specialized and come in as an expert. You just need to come in with an interest and a passion for what we do and a willingness to learn. And the other thing I will say is these places, there's not a lot of space for lawyers, often in interdisciplinary spaces, because lawyers are usually so focused on the law. So really it's about seizing that opportunity and kind of breaking that space open. So, you know, when I started, nobody knew what I was going to do. It's just that my boss wanted a lawyer. And now, you know, like I said, there's 6 of us who are working on these issues. So it's about kind of going in and prying that space open and kind of making room to show where lawyers add value.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Safura. That was actually one of the questions from one of the the public, I can call them that, by, I think, Palisa. I hope that answered your question. Do you have anything else you want to ask Safura about public health law? Okay, I guess not. The next question is also the same kind of question, but this one is for Mapule. Tabiso is asking if I'd like to know if you need a BCom law and an LLB to get into forensics and compliance. Just tell us a bit of like the requirements in order to get into the field.
So you don't really need the BCom. You can get into the field with just your LLB. Most people in the field either have like a BCom accounting, BCom forensic accounting, internal audit, or an LLB. So you don't need both. You can just get in with one. And then depending on which area of compliance you'd like to work in, so if you'll be in the insurance and investment space, it would be very advisable to do your RE1 and RE5. That can be done through Moonstone. It's basically a test which is based on the FASE Act. Both exams actually are based on the FASE Act. The RE5 is just more for the representatives, and the RE1 is for the key individuals and the representatives. And if it's in a hedge fund space, then you would also do the RE3, but you don't need a BCom. Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I think like if you have your LLB, you'll have a more general understanding of the work, because in order to find if there's fraud, you'd have to understand like what the Parker Act says, what FICA says. So you just need your LLB. But you can also do your certifications. So you can become a certified fraud examiner or a certified anti-money laundering specialist. So it just all depends on what you want to specialize in within the field. And I think, again, to what Sisonke was describing about her job, there's like a very great link between compliance and being a company secretary and also the legal department. So the 3 departments really intersect a lot. And I think if you're in a company, it would be so much easier to move across the 3 because the 3 departments really, really work well together.
Okay, thank you so much. One of the, I think it's the same person, she's also asking which companies to look into with regards to compliance. Which companies can she try and approach or look into applying at?
So again, I think it goes back to which area you'd like to specialize in. So whether it's in the financial services, like a bank, an investment company, insurance, you also get compliance officers in like pharmaceutical companies, in the oil industry. So basically anyway, you just have to find what you love. Because I think that's the great thing about compliance. It doesn't restrict you to one area. So you just find an area that you love and then you can go into compliance in that area. So if you love public health law or anything in that space, you could go to a pharmaceutical company. If you love investments, you can go there. So it just depends on what you love the most. And every company, especially now, with all the laws changing and the pandemic going on, there's a need for compliance officers. So whatever you love, just go into compliance in that field.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we go to Naledi, one of the participants was asking Do you need to do your articles in order for you to be admitted as an attorney? So I'm going to assume that this is from a maybe law student or someone who's looking to study law. Yes, you do need to do your articles in order to be admitted as an attorney. So you do your article for 2 years, or you can do it for 1 year, depending on a couple of things. The LPA, the Legal Practice Act, actually regulates the requirements that one needs in order to become an attorney or an advocate. I can send it to you. I hope I'm going to try and get you. Just send me your email address, please, Tepang Langa, and I'll send you the LPA, and you can find all the necessary information in there. And then let me just read the other questions. Okay, great. Naledi, can you also just tell us a little bit about the qualifications that one would need to get into employer relations, and if there are any extra things that a person can maybe look into to boost their applications, or just to increase and sharpen their skills?
Okay, let me just try to unmute. Sorry, I had to do a secondary thing with my phone because I kept on logging off. So with regards to employee relations, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So with regards to employee relations, I think what you need is, I went in with only an LLB in my articles, and I think back then when I started, like I said, I think it was around 10 years ago, it was the point where everybody thought to do anything legally related, you needed admission. I've seen recently that that is no longer the case. People do understand that with an LLB degree, you can get quite far. So then I think having my articles was advantageous, but I think now that's really not the case. A lot of people do the diploma. I think UJ has that advanced diploma in labor law. And I've seen a lot of people really, really appreciate when a person has the diploma, the advanced diploma in labor law. What I did is I went to WITS, Nelson Mandela School of Law has a dispute resolution course. So I did the dispute resolution course, which I think people also appreciate. But the reason why I did that is because I think once all is said and done, I'd like to pursue a career as a CCMA commissioner. So that course sort of assists in that regard, and it also assists in what I do, because I need to understand and be in the mind of a commissioner when I'm standing before them. So those are the courses that I think are advantageous to an employee relations career, over and above an LLB.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you so much for that, guys. We're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, but before we do, two things. Does anyone have any more questions, guys, for our panelists? I see a lot of people are opting to rather type the questions. So I'm going to read some of them. From Litso Bright. Hello, everyone. I would like to know if there is a requirement for one to have prior experience to become a compliance officer, because I have a certificate in business administration. May be advantages if I go into forensics and risk assessment. I think maybe that's for Mapule.
So I think with the compliance one, you can start with an internship in compliance if you don't have experience. But if you've been admitted as an attorney, then that also counts in your favor, and you can just go straight into compliance without having to do an internship or anything. So for me, I think I was helped by the fact that I actually did the 2-year graduate program in forensics. And then when I started at Alexander Forbes, I started with an internship before becoming a junior compliance officer. So yeah, I think if you don't have the experience, you could try an internship, or maybe if you're admitted, then you don't have to do an internship. You can just move straight into compliance. Yes.
Okay,
Or you could just try getting into any company, maybe in the legal department first, or as a company secretary, because you would find it much more easier to move across the three within the company.
Right. Thank you so much. Lisotlo, I hope that answers your question. The next one is from Musima Rasisimola. How do we join women in law? Okay, so for women in law, right now it's not a membership or organization, but depending on how you would like to contribute, just drop me an email at Noemi, that's Noemi, I'll write it down for you at forwomeninlaw.com, and just tell me how you would like to contribute. You want to write articles, however you'd like to contribute, you're more than welcome to do that. So just drop me an email. I'll write it down for you there. And then the next question is from Tabiso Sangweni. Do you need an LLB degree to do any postgraduate legal diploma? Or can you do one if you are a graduate and have any degree? Do you need an LLB degree to do any postgraduate legal diploma, or can you do one if you are a graduate, I guess if you are a graduate within any field and have any other degree? Can anyone answer that?
Yeah, so at UWC, if you have another degree, you can enroll for postgraduate diploma in labor law. I don't know about other universities, but at UWC, you can enroll if you have like another degree, or you have a lot of experience in the field and some, yeah, basically you can with any other degree.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, the degree that I spoke about at UJ, the advanced diploma in labor law, you don't need to have an LLB degree to enroll in that. Even the CCMA commissioner's course, as long as you have experience in the workplace, they let you enroll in that. So you do not need an LLB degree.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
I think also the postgraduate diploma in financial planning, you just need a degree in any field. It doesn't have to be in law. So you'll get accepted with any degree.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, ladies. I hope that answers your question, Tabiso. There's another question that I just saw from Fatima. Does anyone know any specific fields looking for LLB graduates? So I'm going to assume you're currently job hunting, Fatima. I don't know, ladies, do you guys perhaps, are your companies currently looking to hire LLB graduates, and where can we find the information on how to apply perhaps? No. Okay, Fatima, what I'm gonna do is I do have a few vacancies that I usually send to some of my mentees. What I can do is I can also forward them to you if you'd like. These are vacancies within the legal field as well as other fields. So please just drop me your email address and I'll forward them to you. And then, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Also at PwC, they were looking for a compliance administrator at PwC.
PwC. Okay.
So maybe check their website and their LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
Recently, they posted that they were looking for one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think even if it's university, and most of the universities have like a job database where like there's different jobs available. The one thing I just did want to say is I think like listening to everybody here, you can see that getting into a field is a journey that takes a long time. You don't kind of pop out ready-made as a secretary or ready-made as a employee relations person or anything like that. It's a process. And I think you know, one thing I would just highlight is everybody here seemed to have opportunities that they were able to take advantage of and leverage. Whereas the difference, I think, between, for example, a Sisonke and somebody else is that they may have gotten the opportunity to work there, but not able to learn and move and adapt. So, you know, I don't think it's about a particular field looking for you. I think it's more like if you come across an opportunity, leverage it.
No, thank you so much. That's very important. Sarah, thank you so much for that. We have a couple of more questions. Sorry, ladies, I will let you go in 5 to 10 minutes. This one is from, okay, Ritu message. She says, I have a question for Mapule. Okay, I'm gonna wait for you to just type your question, Ritu message.
Can I just say it over? I'm lazy to type actually because I have a pen in my hand as well, so I'm taking notes. Hi ladies, I think it'll be for Mapule and Safura, right? So with me, I have a BA degree in information management, an honors degree in public management, and I hold a postgrad in risk management and currently doing LLB. So ideally, because I work in a bank, retail banking, I found that there was compliance and so forth. So I've been trying to maneuver into that space, hence I am now doing LLB. So you mentioned something like having your RE1. However, with me is I am doing a learnership, right? It's with Banking CETA, which is phase accredited. Is that still applicable for me to do RE, or is it still not applicable? And then in terms of Safura, with my credentials that I have and you being into public law, obviously my other credentials and what I'm currently doing sort of blend in your space. What career advice would you still give to someone like me who's still trying to find a foot into building a strong foundation using the law degree?
So basically what the course you're doing would count for qualification purposes if you want to be an FSCA approved compliance officer. And then you would also still have to do the RE1 and 5. So essentially how it works, if you want to be FSCA approved, you have to have the qualification, which is your degree. You'd need your RE5, and depending on the license that the company is approved for, you would need the RE1 and 3 as well, and also the necessary experience. So they all count together towards being an FSCA approved compliance officer. So I would suggest you can even do your RE5 now while you're still doing your learnership, which would make it so much easier when you want to get a job in compliance, because that would give you like a head start, so to say, on what is needed. So I would highly recommend that you do your RE5 while you're still doing your learnership. I hope that answers you.
So when I was doing my articles and when I was an associate, I was split between insurance litigation and a forensics team. And so I was just with an LLB doing kind of compliance and forensics work for the South African Reserve Bank. And the people who were there largely were also just people who had LLBs or who, like you, had kind of prior qualifications and then had done an LLB and sort of moved into this mixed space. And we were focused a lot on kind of like pyramid schemes and things like that. So I think, you know, what Mapule does is like sort of these like very like an accredited kind of compliance officer, whereas we handled kind of the investigation and the ensuing litigation against violations of certain kinds of legislation. I've also met people who have worked at like your EY or PwCs, etc. And they've sort of done these traineeships with just a law degree behind them, not the full kind of suite of compliance qualifications that Mapule has done. And they've kind of moved, I think their roles are slightly less like what Mapule does, and sort of they're compliance adjacent because not everybody can afford to have a highly qualified compliance officer, but a lot of businesses do need compliance officers. Even where I work now, we have several compliance officers who just have LLBs. What I will say is, you know, because you have all of these prior qualifications, and I think particularly because it's like public management and things like that, you should leverage on that and really look at, you know, something in the public sector with government that kind of draws together the experience that you have, rather than, I see a lot of people who kind of make a career shift and they kind of want to ignore all their previous experience and all their previous learnings. And I'm like, those skills are worthwhile. Somebody will look at your application and say, oh, this person is so much more than an LLB. They really understand X, Y, and Z about my business, or X, Y, and Z about my organization. So all I would say is, you know, obviously Mapule's advice is great, follow it, but also don't forget all the training you've done already, because it will help you. It's what sets you apart.
Thank you. Well answered.
Thank you so much for that, ladies. I have, I think, the last question from Lindo. Hi everyone. Is it then safe to say that the law-related careers outside of being an attorney or advocate are very closely linked to compliance? Because, for example, Naledi's duties include, but are not limited to making sure that a company complies to labor-related policies, while Sonke's duties include making sure that the appointment requirements for directors are being adhered to. Would you guys say that all your careers perhaps are all linked to compliance? Safura, you don't agree? Okay.
You know, I did say that I did compliance when I was doing my articles, and it helped a lot because the skills are very, very transferable. You know, it's detail oriented, it's applying the law, it's understanding the rules of engagement. Like, you know, all those things are helpful, but it is law. And I think that's the thing about law is it feels like, oh, law is about compliance, because fundamentally when you're looking at law, you're looking at whether or not people follow it. But my career is very far removed from compliance. It's just that the skills were helpful. And I'm sure Naledi also has some thoughts about it as well. And I saw Mapule shaking her head.
I want to say that at the end of the day, if you have an LLB degree, yours is to ensure that people adhere to the law, right? And most of what we do is guided by some law. So law is the basis and the foundation, or legal statute would be the basis and the foundation of what we do. But compliance isn't all that we do. I always tell people, especially when it comes to labor law, I had one module of labor law. All I learned is what is an employee, what is not, what are the foundations of an employment contract. And everything else that I've learned has been through my work. So it would seem that compliance is part of it, in the fact that everything that we do, there's a legal statute that is related to it. So somehow we work along those lines, and it sets parameters for what we do, but it definitely, compliance is really, really, if anything, 10% of my workload is complying with the law, because the law is already there and I know that it's there, but everything else around that is what I do.
Okay.
I'd also just like to add, in compliance, listening to Sisonke and Naledi, I've never touched on what they do. So it's not really, really related. I've never touched on anything they do.
I think just like Safura said, it helps. It helps you, but it's not related. Do we have any more questions before I answer my question and then we close up the discussion? Okay, I just want to go back to one of the participants' questions about how to become an attorney. I don't think I touched enough on that. I am going to send you the LPA, which regulates the requirements to becoming an attorney and an advocate. But just briefly, so you do your LLB. You can do your 3-year undergrad BA law or BCom law degree, and then you do your 2-year LLB, or you can do your 4-year LLB, and then you do your articles. Usually it's for 2 years, and most companies want you to do your 2 years with them. You can do it for 1 year if you do your while doing or after you do your law school. But most companies will usually sign you up for 2 years, and then you write your board exams, and then you do your law school as well, and then you become an attorney. While with becoming an advocate, I stand to be corrected, but you do your pupillage for 1 year, and then you become an advocate. But I will send you the LPA, which regulates this, and it has everything that you need in that regard. And now I'm going to close and end this session. Thank you so much, ladies, the panelists, for joining me today. Like, I really appreciate this. This was a very necessary and important discussion. I'm going to continue to release more information for law students who are interested in doing, in getting into careers that aren't necessarily practice. I'm going to write an article on that, and I've recorded this discussion, and I'm going to post it on our various platforms. I'm not sure which ones yet, if any of them can accommodate the recording, but I'm going to try and do that just so we can also accommodate those who couldn't join us today. But thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate this, and I hope we can do this again.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you so much. All right then, bye. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.